Let's dive right in, because right now, behind closed doors, there is an absolute trillion-dollar battle brewing over who actually owns the future of artificial intelligence. In this explainer, we're unpacking what is easily the wildest, most unexpected financial and political collision in modern tech history. We're talking a frantic race for infrastructure, bizarre political alliances forming literally out of thin air, and a highly controversial proposal to take a massive chunk of the AI pie directly from tech billionaires and hand it straight to the public. To really grasp the sheer scale of the stakes here, we have to start with Anthropic. They're one of the absolute heavy hitters in frontier AI, and on June 6, 2026, they confidentially filed for an IPO. But it's the valuation that has Wall Street completely reeling. $965 billion. Yeah, you heard that right. That is nearly $1 trillion for a single AI company that has barely existed for a few years. It's an absolutely astronomical number, and it proves just how much capital is flooding into this sector right now.
And here's the thing, Anthropic is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Based on recent market analysis, big tech firms are on track to pour nearly $400 billion into infrastructure this year alone. They are frantically building out massive data centers, scooping up all the silicon they can get their hands on to train these giant models. I mean, this spending spree is so vast, it's actually driving an estimated 40% of all US GDP growth over the past year. 40%! Just let that sink in for a second.
But here is where the story takes a massive turn. Just as these companies are gearing up to go public and mint these unprecedented fortunes, Senator Bernie Sanders has stepped in to throw a giant wrench into the gears. He just introduced a bill designed to claim exactly 50% of that wealth. And to be clear, we are not talking about a standard corporate tax on profits here. No, this is a direct, one-time 50% equity claim on the companies themselves.
Now, what's really fascinating is exactly who this bill targets. The legislation, which is called the American AI Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, puts a laser focus on pure-play frontier models. So think OpenAI, Anthropic, and Elon Musk's xAI. But very notably, it completely exempts legacy tech conglomerates like Google and Meta, even though they have massive AI divisions of their own. So the target is squarely on these new, pure AI powerhouses that are trying to hit the public markets. The actual mechanics of this proposal are honestly unlike anything we've ever seen in American tax history. The most crucial detail, this one-time 50% tax has to be paid in company stock, not in cash. Those shares would then go into a newly created federal sovereign wealth fund. So practically speaking, the American public would suddenly hold direct voting rights on the boards of companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, along with eventual dividend payouts. Sanders laid out his justification in a recent New York Times op-ed, basically arguing that because these companies train their models using the creative works of millions of people without permission, the public, whose data built it, should legally get a massive cut of the upside.
But wait, because the ultimate plot twist here, and this is truly wild, is that the political left's most prominent democratic socialists and the political right's most prominent populists are converging on the exact same policy outcome. Both sides of the political aisle are now explicitly endorsing the concept of government equity stakes in AI companies. They're using very different language to get there, but the end result is surprisingly similar.
This quote honestly captures that convergence perfectly. On the exact same day Sanders published his op-ed, President Donald Trump told reporters that the U.S. government might take direct equity stakes in AI giants. He said, "You make them a partnership in this revolution. It would be a beautiful thing." This highlights a monumental shift. Trump is historically a huge champion of deregulation, but he's navigating intense pressure from his MAGA base, who are increasingly viewing these AI companies as big tech oligarchs. So, as you can imagine, this creates a highly complex, almost unpredictable political environment for institutional investors.
And the sheer irony of the timing here is just incredible. Look at this sequence. On June 6, 2026, Sanders' op-ed drops. That is the very same day Anthropic confidentially files for its near trillion-dollar IPO. But behind all this public theater, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has actually been privately pitching the idea of a government equity stake to the Trump administration since early 2025. It turns out Silicon Valley executives saw this populist wave coming long before their traditional political allies ever did.
Altman's secret negotiations reveal a really brilliant, highly pragmatic backdoor counterplay. When confronted by this rising populist wave, Altman's message wasn't just a flat-out no. Instead, he rejected the massive 50% threshold, but he offered to advocate for the general idea of public equity participation. This is the ultimate negotiating stance from a CEO who desperately needs to manage political risk on both the left and the right. He knows he has to clear a smooth path for these upcoming Wall Street IPOs, and a smaller, carefully negotiated government stake might just be the necessary price of admission.
And make no mistake, the AI industry desperately needs Wall Street's capital right now. Just to give you an idea of the burn rate we're talking about, look at Alphabet. They just announced a plan to sell $80 billion in stock for the sole purpose of funding their massive AI infrastructure spending spree. Market strategists are even warning that funding this crazy capital expenditure boom is becoming the single most important topic for markets today. Building the future is unimaginably expensive, and these companies simply cannot afford to have their access to public markets blocked by political outrage.
The tech giants know massive societal shifts are coming, which is exactly why they are scrambling to get ahead of the narrative. OpenAI's foundation just committed $250 million specifically to research AI's economic effects. We're talking labor market displacement and entirely new models for distributing value. It is a very clear industry recognition that if they don't help figure out economic resilience and workforce transition right now, regulators are going to step in and force much harsher solutions on them later down the line.
Now, this massive debate over government ownership isn't just happening in a vacuum. It's playing out alongside a chaotic, global regulatory tug-of-war. At the U.S. federal level, you've got broad bills like the American Leadership in AI Act trying to consolidate rules. But then, at the state level, laws like Colorado's SB 26189 and California's CCPA are creating really aggressive, complex compliance hurdles. Meanwhile, across the pond, the UK is proposing something called cross-economy sandboxing. Basically, they are temporarily relaxing rules to let AI startups test their technology in the real world, actively trying to poach frustrated innovators right out of America.
And this state-level fragmentation in the U.S. is rapidly becoming a massive crisis. A recent federal executive order explicitly warns that having 50 different state regulatory regimes creates disproportionately burdensome compliance challenges, especially for startups who just don't have the massive legal teams to handle it. There is a very real concern that state laws could essentially force AI systems to produce inaccurate results just to satisfy local rules, which ultimately impinges on interstate commerce and heavily threatens American innovation on the global stage.
So, as we look at almost $1 trillion on the line in a single IPO and mounting populist pressure from both sides of the political aisle, the future of AI capitalism is entirely up in the air. The trillion-dollar question we have to ask is this: will this AI revolution lead to new structures that actually democratize wealth and benefit the public whose data built it? Or will this chaotic clash of government intervention and fragmented regulations ultimately suffocate the fastest-growing sector of our economy? The answer is being written right now. Thanks for joining this explainer, and we'll see you in the next one.